إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وصحبه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا سندي يا حبيبي يا طبيبي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا رحمة للعالمين نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون وأيضا في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الأمين المكين الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين الحمد لله رب العالمين غوث أعظم بمن بسر ساما مدد إبلاء دي مدد كعبة إمام مدد قادريم نعرائي غوث أعظم بزنم تمز الشيخ أحمد رضا خان قدوة عالم بزنم سيدي يا مرشدي شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندباد مسلک سرکار اعلیٰ اعلیٰ حضرت زندباد یا الہی مسلک احمد رضا خان زندباد حفظ ناموں سے رسالت کا جو ذمہ دار ہے سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندباد حامل فیض رضا مصطفیٰ امداد کن صلی اللہ علیہ النبی الامی وآلہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلاة و سلام علیک یا سیدی یا سندی یا حبیبی یا طبیبی یا رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا رحمة للعالمين. All praise is due to Almighty Allah. Durood and salams upon the most perfect, exalted and glorified of Allah's creation, Sayyiduna wa Mawlana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. His blessings and salutations upon the Anbiya Ikram, Ahl Bayt Athhar, Sahaba Ikram, Khalifa Rashidin, Tabi'in, Tabi' Tabi'in, Aimai Mujtahideen, Awliya Kamilin, and all those who will follow the path until the last day. We thank Almighty Allah for His infinite mercy and to the wasila of Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for blessing us with the opportunity to congregate for Salatul Jumu'ah and to prostrate in His most exalted court. Before continuing, let us all direct our hearts and our minds and our thoughts to the holy and the sanctified court of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and in doing so let us from the depths of our hearts collectively recite Durood Pak. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammadin salatan daimatan maqbulatan tu'addi biha annaha al-qawl azim. Ahmad Raza ka taza gulistan hai aaj bhi. Ahmad Raza ka taza गुलिस्तान है आज भी खुर्शीद इल्म उनका दरख्शां है आज भी अहमद रज़ा का शम्आ फरोज़ा है आज भी अहमद रज़ा का शम्आ फरोज़ा है आज भी खुर्शीद इल्म उनका दरख्शां है आज भी सब उनसे जलने वालों के गुल हो गए चिराग सब उनसे जलने वालों के गुल हो गए चिराग अहमद रज़ा की शम्आ फरोज़ा है आज अहमद रज़ा की शम्आ फरोज़ा है आज भी बादे विसाल इश्क नबी कम नहीं हुआ बादे विसाल इश्क नबी कम नहीं हुआ रूहे रज़ा हुजूर पे कुर्बान है आज रूहे रज़ा हुजूर पे कुर्बान है आज भी मिर्ज़ा सरे नियाज झुकाता है इसलिए इल्मो अमल की कितने नहरे बहा दिए इल्मो अमल पे आपका एहसान है आज सुभान अल्लाह Allah by His divine grace and mercy in every era and in every zamana from the beginning of time, Allah sent a sign of recognition of the believers, so that the true believers and those who only claim to be believers may be differentiated. Just now Hafiz Sharif told you while he was reading that kalam, beautiful kalam, that everybody claims today to be Ahl Sunnat wal Jama'ah. Everybody claims to be Sunni. नाम से कुछ नहीं होता, नाम से कुछ नहीं होता, काम से होता है. There's nothing about only namesake. We need to see the action. We need to see that what we say is what we're doing. And to show this distinction and this differentiation, in every zamana, Almighty Allah sent a sign of recognition. In every zamana, Almighty Allah sent a sign of recognition. And which zamana was better and is better than the zamana of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? No zamana. Khairul Qurun Karni. The beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the best zamana of every zamana is my zamana. Which can be better? Nothing. There is no better zamana. But the beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Ayatul Iman, Hubbul Ansar. Wa Ayatul Nifaq, Bughzul Ansar. This is in the zamana of the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There is no greater distinction in the universe of haq and batil than the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There is no greater distinction of haq and batil from the beginning till the end of time than the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You're going to ask me, what about in the time of Adam alayhi salam? You are just saying, you've made a statement that there is no greater distinction between haq and batil from the beginning of time till the end than Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what about the time of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam? There too the distinction was Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There too the distinction was Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Why? Hazrat Adam alayhi salam showed that when he asked in the court of Allah, he said, "Oh Allah, accept my dua through the sadaqah of him whose name is written with your name on the hand." So the distinction was made that those who pick up their hands till Qayamat and say, "Oh Allah, wasta Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ka." Oh Allah, give to the sadaqah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wahi Adami hai. They are the children, the real children of Adam. The distinction was made. Adam alayhi salam taught. His hand was picked up to show that even Adam needs to ask in the court of Allah. Then he asked through Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today they want to say, leave the Nabi and ask. Leave the Nabi and ask. You'll reach Allah. वस्ले मौला चाहते हो तो वसीला ढूंढ लो, वस्ले मौला चाहते हो तो वसीला ढूंढ लो, बेवसीले नजदिया हरगिज खुदा मिलता नहीं, बेवसीले नजदिया हरगिज खुदा मिलता नहीं. When the father and the forefather of entire mankind wished to ask in the court of Allah, he took the name of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why would he take the name of the Nabi then? Because Adam alayhi salam knew that the Nabi is then and the Nabi is now. The Nabi is then and the Nabi is now, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the distinction was even then. And in the zaman of Rasul Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that was when they were not physically, the beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not physically before the sight of the people, but his nur was present. It was in the forehead of Adam alayhi salam. That is why Adam alayhi salam was made the Khalifa of Allah. That is why Adam alayhi salam was sent as the great envoy on this earth. Because in his Mubarak Peshani was the Mubarak Noor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And that is why the angels were commanded to make sajda to Adam alayhi salatu wasallam. Because he was the Qibla of the Noor of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. So the distinction was made. Now tell me, this is in every zamana. Even when the Ark of Nuh alayhi salam sailed, and when the Ark of Nuh alayhi salam reached the shore, it was the sadqa of the Noor Muhammadi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It was the sadqa of the Noor Muhammadi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So in every zamana, there is no greater distinction except the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now can you imagine in that zamana? Can you imagine in that zamana when the stars are Siddiq, Umar, Osman, Ali? When the stars are Siddiq, Umar, Osman, Ali, and they all looking at the blessed and the Mubarak Chahr Anwar of the moon of Medina, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Who would have been, they are now making ziyarat and didar of that face. Allahu Akbar. Upon which the rains of mercy descend. I want to ask you today, Allahu Akbar, dil ki baat. I ask you from my heart and I expect you to respond from your heart. Tell me, what do each of us know about the Gumbad-e Khazra? What do each of us know about the court of Rasul Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam today? We know that every morning 70,000 angels descend upon the court of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know that every evening 70,000 angels descend upon the court of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What a malaika! What a malaika! What kind of makhluk are they? They are noor. What kind of makhluk are they? They are noor. Allah Ta'ala is sending them from His court on the court of the beloved Nabi to the court of the beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who is Rahmatul Lil Alameen, who is Noor. Even those that are descending from the skies are Noor. And the Gumbad-e Khadra of the beloved Rasul is shining and it is glowing. You think about it, that when that is the shan of the holy dome of Rasul Pak, the court of the Nabi, upon which the angels are descending, then what is the chan of the tajalli of Allah which is descending on the noble face of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam present, and think about it for a moment, that the beloved Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is present and the Sahaba Ikram are looking at the beloved and the Mubarak face of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They are looking at those eyes that saw the Rabb. You know, I think about something like now. What must have been the taqat of the eyes of those Sahaba? What must have been the taqat of the eyes of those Sahaba? Especially when the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam descended from Mi'raj. Indeed, there are veils upon veils upon veils upon veils on the Mubarak face of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because the Nabi himself said, except my Rabb, nobody knows my haqiqat. Nobody knows my reality. But imagine that when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam saw the tajalli of Allah, he didn't see Allah. He saw the tajalli of Allah. Then the power of the eyes of Musa alayhi salam was that nobody could look at his eyes. He used to wear a covering, a solid covering of his eyes. But the power of his eyes was that at approximately 50-mile distance, Musa alayhi salam could see a black ant on a black rock on the mountain walking on a dark night. This was the eyes of Musa alayhi salam. And the eyes of that Nabi who went and with the eyes of his head saw his Rabb and he came, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Nobody could look in his eyes. But subhanallah, Qurban Jai upon the eyes of the Sahaba Ikram, Ridwanullah Ta'ala Majmin. Allah gave them the taqat that with the veils they will be able to make ziyarat of the holy eyes in the Mubarak face of Rasul Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The point that I want to make, and I've started with, that in every zamana there has been a sign of recognition. And the beloved Nabi in his zamana, what need was there for a recognition when the Nabi is there? But the Nabi said, Hubbul Iman, Ayatul Iman, Hubbul Ansar. Ayatul Iman, Hubbul Ansar. The sign of Iman is love for the Ansar. Wa'ayatun nifaq, bughzul ansar. And the sign of hypocrisy is to have animosity against the Ansar. Subhanallah. This is the zaman of the Nabi. And the Nabi is showing that even in this zamana they are munafiqs. And if you want to know who really love me, then know that the love of the Ansar is the sign of Iman. The love of the Ansar is the sign of Iman. In other words, the love of my real Sahaba. And the Nabi says Ansar because the Ansar were those who sacrificed everything. Why? In the love of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. So Rasul Pak zamana, when there is a sign of recognition, then every zamana Allah Ta'ala made somebody a sign of recognition. So see, who are those with the beloved Nabi and who are those who only claim to be with the beloved Nabi. And in this zamana, the sign of that recognition is Ala Hazrat Imam Ahl Sunnat, Shah Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, Fazile Barelvi radiallahu anh. And that sign and that identification is in the form of Maslaki Ala Hazrat radiallahu ta'ala anh. Remember, we need to remember that everything that we do in our lives will be questioned about. Every one of us, myself included, koi bachne wala nahi. All of us are going to be accountable in the court of Allah one day. All of us are going to be accountable one day in the court of Allah, and all of us are going to be answerable in the court of Allah. We should not think that we can do what we want in this dunya and in the akhirat we will just get away. We depend on the mercy and the love of Allah and His beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But you must remember something. Everything we make excuse to. And let me tell you one riwayat quickly. Hazrat Sayyidina Lais radiyallahu anh. Hazrat Sayyidina Lais radiyallahu anh says that Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Mujahid radiyallahu anh said that on the day of Qiyamah, I want you to listen to this with your heart. On the day of Qiyamah, 3 people will be brought in the court of Allah. Everybody will be brought, but he gives one waqia. That 3 people will be brought in the court of Allah. One will be a wealthy man. One will be a wealthy man. One will be a sick man. And one will be a slave. While he was in this dunya, he was a wealthy man. While he was in this dunya, he was a sick person, sickly man. The other person. And the third person was a slave. So, the 3 will be brought. Almighty Allah will speak to the wealthy man. And Almighty Allah will say to the wealthy man, what hindered you from my ibadat? Allah. What stopped you from performing my ibadah? Allah will ask the rich man. He will say, oh Allah, you gave me so much of wealth. What he will say? Oh Allah, you gave me so much of wealth and riches, and due to being occupied in it, I became rebellious and disobedient. Allah, you gave me all this wealth, but I got lost in the wealth. I was so drowned in the wealth, oh Allah, I didn't make your ibadah. I was too occupied. I was too occupied. Allah Almighty at that moment will call Hazrat Sulaiman ala Nabina alayhi salatu wassalam with his entire kingdom. And Allah will look at the wealthy man and say, were you more occupied than him? Were you more occupied than him? Who was more occupied? Allah will ask him, him or you? And he will say, oh Allah, he was more occupied. Almighty Allah will say to him, who was more occupied? He will say, him, he was more occupied. Then Almighty Allah will call the sick person. Almighty Allah will say to the sick person, and when this person says that, when the wealthy person will say that he is more occupied, Allah will say, he was more occupied, Allah will say that his being busy and occupied did not hinder him from my ibadah. Musa alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam. Then Almighty Allah will call the sick person. Allah will ask him, to the sick person, or to the maris, what hindered you from my ibadah? He will say, oh Allah, my Rabb, because of this illness that I have had all my life, you have kept me busy in my body, looking after myself, caring for myself, treating myself. Oh Allah, I was very sick. Almighty Allah will call Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah will call Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salatu wassalam. And Allah will ask the sick man, were you in greater discomfort or was he in greater discomfort? Because that was Allah's test upon him. And the man will say, he was indeed in more discomfort. Allah will say, but his discomfort did not hinder him from my ibadat. His discomfort did not hinder him from my ibadat. Then Allah will call the slave and say, what has hindered you from my ibadat? He will say, oh Allah, you made me a slave. So my slave master used to oppress me and give me taklif. And he gave me so much of things to do. He oppressed me. Almighty Allah will call Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah will call Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. He will say, tell me, were you more oppressed? Were you more oppressed? Or was he living under more strict and harsh oppression? More oppressive conditions. The person will say, oh Allah, he was living under stricter and more harsher conditions. Allah will say, then this oppressive state which he stayed in did not hinder him from my ibadat. Think about it. Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Abu Nu'aym radiallahu anhu explains this whole entire waqya. I've given you the gist of it. Think about it, Allahu Akbar. Think about it for a moment. What is this telling us? It is telling us that being caught up and lost in worldly activities will not be counted as excuse in the court of Allah. You can't say on that day that I was too busy. You can't say I was sick. You can't say I was working for the boss. He didn't let me read the salah. He didn't allow me to do that. These excuses will not be accepted. Now I want you to think about it for a moment. All these questions which are being asked are about ibadat, which is amal. All these questions which are being asked about ibadat, which is amal. What will happen on the day of Qiyamah in the matters of Aqidah? What will happen on the day of Qiyamah in the matters of Aqidah? What excuse will you give for sitting with the enemies of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What excuse you will give for reading your salah behind those who said that the beloved Nabi does not know what is behind the wall? Even that statement, that where these Badmazhab say that the Nabi said that I do not know what is behind the wall, they say Shaykh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Delhi radiallahu anhu quoted that narration, and he said that Nabi said that I do not know what is behind the wall. Hazrat Shaykh Muhakkik, Shaykh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Delhi radiallahu anhu, this is khayanat against his kitab. This is khayanat and fraudulent behavior against his kitab. Hazrat Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Delhi quotes this narration and he says, some people say that the Nabi said that I do not know what is behind the wall. He said there is no source to this, there is no sahih narration. So Hazrat Shaykh Abdul Haq didn't say this, he refuted this. He did not say this, he refuted it. So think about it. What is going to be our excuse on the day of Qiyamah? What is going to be your excuse on the day of Qiyamah? When you are asked that why did you support those people? Why did you befriend those and sit with those and accompany those who sympathize with the Badmazhabs and the deviants? What were you going to say? What are you going to say in the court of Allah? What excuse? You say, Allah, I was trying to make some money. Is that what you're going to say? I was trying to spread your word. I was trying to keep peace. I was trying to keep everybody united. I was trying to build my masjid. I was trying to look after my madrasa. Are these the excuses? I was trying to show my good character. Are these the excuses that we're going to present in the court of Allah? When it comes to aqaid, when it comes to the enemies of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is why the Nabi said, Iyakum wa iyahum. This is why the Nabi said, keep yourself away from them and keep them away from you. Why did he say this? So that on the day of Qiyamah, when it comes to your iman and aqidah, you don't face this condition. You don't face this condition in the court of Allah. Remember, it is something that we must understand. We can make as much excuses as we want in the dunya. We can make as much excuses as we want in this world. But we can hoodwink who we want. We can deceive who we want. People will not know. But on the day of Qiyamah, when you are here, you are doing it with the creation. There you're going to stand in front of the Creator. There you're going to stand in front of the Creator. Think about it. You know, it's a sad state of affairs, and I'm going to end with this. Look at the state of the people today. We're talking about Ala Hadrat. The Imam what didn't he do for the safety of our Iman? What didn't he do for the protection of our Iman? Din raat ko ek kar diya. Khoon pasina ko ek kar diya. Why? For the sake of our Iman. Look at the state of the people today. Look at how people and leaders are changing. Look at it, look around you. Each one is looking for a means to amass more followers than the other. But we are forgetting. We are forgetting our pious predecessors. We are forgetting our mashayikh and the way of the pious predecessors. On the day of Qiyamah, when you're going to be asked that why did you forget those who Allah said وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. When you're going to be asked about it, what you're going to say? What is going to be your answer? There's only going to be one answer: dunya, dunya, dunya. All this was done for this dunya, and this dunya is that which will become fana. It will come to an end. People have forgotten their loyalties. They are leaving the way of those who have given them everything, and they are leaving the way of those who gave them what they are today. This is the karam of the pious and the beloved servants of Allah. And I'm telling you that I've seen it with my own eyes, and you are seeing it. And I'm giving you an example of the not so far past. When Huzur Taaj Al Shariah radiallahu anh left this physical dunya, I seen people flip overnight. Overnight, as they were waiting of bahana to do wrong. They were waiting to make their own path and map their own paths. Do not forget, that is the biggest mistake you made. Because you thought that these mashayikh were only aware of your condition when you are here and they are in front of you. They are aware even from their qabr. They are aware everywhere, because Allah's beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has showered them with special mercy. This time has come where we have to understand what is haqq and what is batil. We have to think about where our loyalties stand. It is sad that our own are changing so fast. And just for the sake of dunya. And I'm going to end today with a few shares. I'm going to take 2 minutes more of your time. I'm going to end today with some shares there in Urdu. If you need to, inshallah, in future I will explain them to you. The shares of Huzur Taaj Al Shariah radiallahu anh. Take this with the pen of spiritualism and write it on your heart. Whatever is the gist of it, put it on your heart. You know what he says? He says, "Ghair apne ho gaye to hamare badal gaye." Ghair apne ho gaye jo hamare badal gaye. Nazare badal gayi to nazare badal gaye. किसको सुनाइएगा यहाँ गम का दास्तान, किसको सुनाइएगा यहाँ गम का दास्तान, जो गम में साथ देते वो सारे बदल गए, जो गम में साथ देते वो सारे बदल गए। ढूंढे से पाइएगा न पहले सी मस्तियाँ, ढूंढे से पाइएगा न पहली सी मस्तियाँ, बदली शराब कहना वो प्याले बदल गए। इस दौर मसलिहत में, इस दौर मसलिहत में, in this time of compromising, इस दौर मसलिहत में वफा कोई शय नहीं, loyalty is nothing. इस दौर मसलिहत में वफा कोई शय नहीं, गाहे हुए हमारे तो गाहे बदल गए. And he's giving you the answer to all of this in the end. He says everyone changes, everybody wants to leave the way. He says, why are you running behind them? What should you do? He says, Akhtar lagaiye lo Nabi Kareem se. Oh Akhtar, attach yourself to your beloved Nabi. Attach yourself to your beloved Nabi. Akhtar lagaiye lo Nabi Kareem se. Kya fikr ahle dunya jo sare badal gaye. Kya fikr ahle dunya jo sare badal gaye. Why do you care about the people of the world if they have all changed? You will not care about it if your heart is attached to Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Make dua. We should all make dua in this time. It is a very difficult time. We should make dua that Allah keeps us with iman. And when the time to die comes, may Allah let us leave this world with iman. May Allah keep us firm on mazhab-e-muhazzab, mazhab-e-ahl-sunnat, maslaki ala hadrat. May Allah keep us in the love of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those who are the beloveds of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We make special dua that all those who are ill, Allah grant them shifa kamil, sayyid ajil. Those who have passed away in Ahl Sunnah, Allah exalt them in Jannat al-Na'im. Those that are going through any calamities and difficulties, the Muslims of Pakistan with the devastating floods that are happening there, may Allah ease their time. The Muslims of India that are going through extreme difficulty because of zulm, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them safety and aman. And the Muslims of Palestine and wherever else are going through taklif, may Allah ease these times upon them. We make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us firm on the way of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, which is today identified as Maslak ala Hadrat. May Allah keep us with iman, let us leave this world with iman.